My name is Sarah. My husband Michael and I live together. In college, we met for the first time. Soon after, we started dating, and we kept dating even as we went from being students to working adults. Then Michael asked me to marry him, and I said yes. Other than being married, not much changed after the wedding because we were already in a loving relationship and lived together. As a couple, we've been living together without any problems. The people we married thought we were a good match for each other, but our gentle nature might have seemed too soft to them. Those two are my sister Emily and her husband Richard. They got married 2 years before we did. I knew about Michael's sister's wedding because I had been with him for a long time. It looked like Emily's wedding wasn't perfect, though. Her in-laws were confused when she said, "I will only invite women who look less attractive than me to my wedding." It seemed like she cared about how she looked. If her friends who were asked to the wedding heard that, I wonder what they would think. To be able to say such things, she must not have thought about that at all. I was told she said those words in front of the people she had invited, and there was complete quiet in the room. "Isn't that too much?" asked one woman. She replied, "Stop being jealous of me. Thanks for coming. You all look like you're almost 30 years old. It's not clear if Richard's friends see you all as possible mates. That made it even colder outside." I didn't understand why Richard didn't leave her even though she was so rude. It was easy to see the answer, though. Both Richard and Emily say rude things. Instead of telling Emily she was wrong for making fun of their wedding guests, Richard said, "Emily, it's cruel to tell them the truth. People who are ugly still have feelings. Because of this, more of their own friends stayed away from them. People who weren't asked to the wedding cut ties with them after hearing stories from people who did go. When it comes to family, it's hard to cut ties, but friends can do it. This apartment is really lovely. Usually a detached house is thought of as a mansion, but with this much space, an apartment can be called a mansion," Emily said out of the blue when she came to see our apartment. I was confused when she showed up out of the blue. She then walked down the hall and opened one door after another. I could only stand there and look blankly. Michael, her brother, was just as shocked and stood there with his mouth open. Emily looked around our house without being noticed while we were shocked. "Where are the snacks and beer?" Richard opened the fridge without permission and asked. I thought it was crazy that my brother-in-law and his wife did that. It is rude to open doors and fridges without being asked in most homes. This is something we are all taught. I was shocked that they couldn't even follow such simple rules of behavior. "Excuse me, but may I ask what brought you here today?" I asked after taking a deep breath to calm down. "Why didn't you invite Mom and Dad to this apartment? Since I'm your sister, it makes sense that I should be welcome too, right? Also, why haven't you brought me tea yet?" She told us while snacking on something she had found in the kitchen cabinet without our permission. It's very rude to eat snacks off the shelf without being asked, and then demand tea. I served Emily and Richard tea with a sad heart. Yes, we did have my in-laws over a few days ago, but it wasn't to show off our house. It was for a special reason. At first, the word invite didn't seem quite right. "I bet you gave Mom and Dad some tasty treats and fancy tea, right? You do want to keep Dad happy, right?" She looked at us with an awkward, sarcastic look on her face. Michael and I could not think of a reason to make my father-in-law like us more. We've never lied to him just to get his attention. Emily was trying to say something, but we couldn't understand it. "Emily, what do you mean?" "Are we trying to make Dad like us or something?" Michael asked with a laugh. "You wouldn't be able to stay at the company if you don't lick his boots, right?" Emily asked back. Michael and I looked at each other, confused. It's true that Michael works for my father-in-law, who runs a business. But Michael works hard there for his father, who doesn't favor anyone. He went through tough training and is now in charge of a group of people. He doesn't have to put on a show or act fancy to keep his job. Of course, he should show respect to his father, who is the CEO of the business. I'm the family's center, and Michael joined us later, right? That means Michael should care about how Dad and I feel. She stood firm. If I get mad, I could just ask Dad to fire you from the company. Michael and I could only exchange looks. We had absolutely no idea what she was aiming for. Richard smirked proudly as Emily declared that we'd lose our jobs if we didn't bow down to her. I probably wasn't the only one who felt uncomfortable under his gaze. After making remarks beyond our comprehension, they left, leaving behind scattered snacks and spilled tea. Sighing, we began to clean up quickly. What was she trying to say? That she'd have me fired? Michael murmured. Does Emily really have a say in personnel decisions? I asked, and Michael shook his head. No way. As you know, Dad's not especially soft on family members. If anything, he's pretty strict. Seeing Dad's strictness makes me think Mom spoiled Emily too much when she was young, he said. Right. Dad wouldn't give Emily special treatment, that's for sure, I agreed. My mother-in-law cuddled young Emily to an extreme and now deeply regrets it, saying she wishes she could hide in a hole for how she raised her. I can't help but feel pity for my parents-in-law for the disappointment they must feel towards their daughter's transformation into someone they didn't intend her to be. But why did Emily say she would fire you? Was there some kind of trouble? That's a real mystery. Michael and I could only shrug in confusion. No matter how much we pondered, Emily's true intentions were beyond us. Deciding not to dwell on it, I moved on to the next task at hand. That task was preparing to move. With most of the packing done, the next step was the big move. After completing the paperwork and shipping the boxes, I took a flight to France. What was happening back in our home in the U.S. was beyond my imagination. Upon landing in France and turning on my phone, I discovered over 10 voicemail messages from Emily. Surprised, I thought of my in-laws. Despite my reservations, I immediately contacted her. Emily, I just checked my phone. Is everything okay? I asked urgently. The reply I received was completely unexpected. Finally got through to you. Since you didn't respond, Richard and I had a delightful time on your and Michael's bed, she said. What? I couldn't comprehend what she was saying and tilted my head in confusion. Emily sounded pleased, so it seemed unlikely that anything had happened to my in-laws. So, I'm at your apartment now. You both seem to be away, and we're just enjoying this luxurious space, she continued. Our apartment? Where we used to live. Why are you there? And what do you mean by a delightful time with your husband? I asked, bewildered, holding my head in confusion. I had known of Emily and Richard's impudence, but I never imagined it would come to this. They had prepared a spare key to use in our absence. This seemed to have been planned all along. Oh yes, I got rid of all your stuff, she exclaimed. What? I was in shock. Because this wonderful home is ours now, we'll set aside Michael's things until he comes to pick them up. I've disliked you since way back. This is my revenge, she declared. I see. You were critical even at your own wedding about others' appearances. I never thought you'd turn that criticism on me. Before evaluating others' faces, you should take a look at the darkness in your own heart, I said. Huh. She seemed perplexed. You said you disposed of my things, right? I asked to confirm. Yes, I threw them out. By the way, what was with your stuff? There were several albums, but not a single photo of you in them. They were all pictures with Michael at the center, and in all of them, he's not even looking at the camera. You really have no skill in taking photos. The albums were creepy, so I threw them out this morning, she bragged. Emily proudly detailed how she had thrown everything away. She boasted about discarding the clothes in the closet, the books and diaries on the bookshelves, and selling the computer and other electronics to someone she knew. I didn't get upset or raise my voice because those belongings weren't mine. So, how about it, Sarah? Are you going to cry and ask me why I threw them away? If you cry, won't your face become even uglier? She taunted. Sorry to burst your bubble while you're enjoying throwing away someone else's stuff, but just so you know, Michael and I got divorced, and I now live overseas, I informed her. What that means is the things you disposed of weren't mine. Wait a minute. You lived in this apartment with Michael, right? And Michael's clothes are still here. How can Michael's things be here and not yours? She asked, bewildered. That's because I left the apartment when we got divorced. No way! You two always seemed so happy together, Emily said, surprised. Her surprise was understandable. Nonetheless, Michael and I were indeed divorced. Actually, I split up with Michael because of your parents' request, I revealed. What? She exclaimed. Remember the photos in the album you said you threw away? The ones where Michael isn't looking at the camera? Yes, I remember. Well, those photos were taken by a woman who was obsessed with Michael. They're candid, which is why he wasn't looking at the camera. What? She asked, shocked. Michael and I had been troubled by that woman for a long time. We hoped she would give up on him once we were married, but things were not that simple. She was convinced Michael was her destiny and interfered with our marriage multiple times. We managed not to invite her to the wedding, but her furious father turned out to be the head of a major corporation that my father-in-law, as a business owner, respected. Disregarding my daughter's feelings and proceeding with another woman. What's the meaning of this? If you don't marry my daughter, your business is over. He had threatened, without hesitation. When I mentioned this, Emily seemed lost for words and shocked. After a moment, I called out, "Hello?" She snapped back, asking cautiously, "By any chance, is she Rachel?" "Yes, that's right. You know Rachel, don't you? I heard she's your and Michael's childhood friend." "That Rachel? Is it really that Rachel?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. It seemed Rachel had misunderstood their childhood friendship as something more and had harbored this misconception for years. Suddenly, Emily's cheerful tone changed drastically. "Don't tell me. After you got divorced and left this apartment, Rachel moved in to live here with Michael." "Exactly. So, the photo albums, clothes, and items I got rid of, they would all belong to Rachel, wouldn't they?" The moment she realized the situation, she gasped. It seemed Rachel was someone Emily would rather avoid. Emily must have wanted to avoid unnecessary involvement with a woman whose father runs an even larger corporation than her own father. But now, it was too late. "Hey, Sarah, can't we do something even now? If you come over quickly and explain you did it out of spite because she took Michael away. As I mentioned before, I'm overseas now, so I can't be there instantly. Rachel will definitely scold me. She's the type to bring her parents into even the smallest conflict and press the issue to the end. And to think I did it with my husband on the bed that was meant for her and Michael. It's too late for regrets now, and honestly, it's best to just tell the truth, don't you think? I can't do that. Oh, I know, I'll clean up quickly and hide somewhere. I'm going to run away. If anyone asks, I'll just say Sarah caused it all." I told her that would be difficult. Why would that be difficult? Because I accepted a substantial amount of money from Rachel to put some distance between her dream life with Michael and me. I moved overseas to live a life I've always dreamed of. I've already told her that, but she was worried I might come back for Michael. So she gave me her contact information, insisting I call her as soon as I arrived overseas. I just sent her a photo of myself here, and a screenshot from Messenger confirming you and Richard entered the apartment without permission. She just contacted me saying she's already at the apartment. Oh, wait. There's the intercom. With those words, the call ended. Presumably Rachel, accompanied by her father's men, swiftly took care of Emily and Richard. While Emily and Rachel's standoff continued, I focused on settling into my new life here. "Sorry, I'm late," Michael said with a smile as he hurried over to me at the airport. Because she was unable to give up on Michael, Rachel watched us dissolve our relationship in front of her, and we decided to hastily escape abroad. It was convenient for us as my in-laws and their company were at a standstill, possibly considering liquidation. Emily had long believed she would take over the company, but now faced the reality of it shutting down without having worked a day. In the end, Rachel forced Emily and Richard into hard labor at a company her father owned, angry that they had tainted her home. Surprisingly, Rachel began to show affection toward Richard, and now Emily is left to work alone, struggling to pay off her debt to Rachel. We decided to enjoy our peaceful days in a new land, free from the troubles of Rachel and the burdensome in-laws. My name is Suzanne. I'm 45 years old. My husband is the same age as me, and we live together with his mother. I have a feeling my mother-in-law will have something to say, so I better get dinner started. Time sure flew by. Before I knew it, it was past 5 p.m. I took a short break and headed to the kitchen on the first floor. It seemed my mother-in-law hadn't come home yet. I took a moment to relax and started to think about the dinner menu. I work from home as a fashion designer, so this house also serves as my workplace. The living and dining areas are on the first floor, and the second floor houses our bedroom and my workspace. I'm home. Today was exhausting. Upon seeing me, my mother-in-law let out an exaggerated sigh. What followed were her usual remarks. You're just starting dinner? Isn't it a bit late? I came home tired and my son will be home soon, you know." My mother-in-law tended to nitpick about small things. "Sorry, mother-in-law," I replied. "While she is enjoying her retirement, I'm still working. I wish she'd understand that sometimes." Nonetheless, I tried to change the topic by asking, "Mother-in-law, where did you go today?" "I met up with some neighbors. Apparently, they're going to attend an event at the senior citizens' home. But honestly, chatting with other elderly folks can be tiring." "I see. That must have been a bit tough," I replied to her with a smile, though inwardly I was saying to myself, "You're elderly yourself, aren't you? If you'd like to do something nice, maybe you can get me something sweet. How about getting a bun from the shop next door?" My mother-in-law always prioritized her own feelings. She often tried to get me to do things her way. It was tiring, but I always thought of ways to handle it. If she made a fuss, I might just give her the old cake from the fridge. I spent my days with her like this. "Suzanne, is this all for today's menu?" she asked with a slightly surprised look. Before her were pot roast with braised vegetables, home-style chicken noodle soup, and leftover fried chicken with pickles. "Well, I was a bit busy today, so I made something quick." Even if you're busy with work, you shouldn't neglect your duties as a wife. Next to me, my husband said, "Yeah, but this looks good enough to me," as he happily began to eat my cooking. There was a subtle tension at the dinner table. When I was a newlywed, I was always on edge, but I lived each day to the fullest. I'd get up early, stay up late, cook, sew, arrange flowers. I cherished each of these hobbies. As she reminisced, I was reminded of her era. Indeed, her sewing skills and her hobbies, like flower arrangements, were truly impressive. People around often said, "Suzanne's mother-in-law is really graceful." But they didn't know how demanding she could be at home. I've lived with her for over 20 years. When we first started our married life, my husband and I enjoyed our time together, but one day my mother-in-law suddenly came to live with us. Her marriage wasn't going well, and she had a fallout with my father-in-law. He had a stern demeanor, and she seemed scared of him. According to my husband, his father was sometimes very hard on her, and sadly, even raised his hand against her. While he was doted on as their son, His mother was treated poorly. Then, when my father-in-law suddenly declared he was remarrying, she had to leave with nothing. Nearing 50, she seemed lost with nowhere to go. My husband and I decided to take in my mother-in-law because we were concerned about her. 20 years have passed since then, and I began to notice changes in my mother-in-law's personality. She started directing the same behavior she had once received from my father-in-law towards us. One day, when I was busy with household chores and couldn't make tea, I asked my husband to do it for me. He kindly obliged, but my mother-in-law shot me a look and asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm sorry, my hands are full right now." "So what? You only contribute $500 in rent every month." "What are you thinking?" she blurted out. Watching her make the tea herself, I thought, if you could do it yourself, you should have done it from the start. Living together like this made me realize how challenging it truly was. One day, my mother-in-law came home looking rather excited. She walked around the house with a spring in her step, humming a cheerful tune. "Mother-in-law, you seem to be in a good mood. Did something good happen?" "Speaking of which, Suzanne, which room do you think is bigger, the one on the first or second floor?" Her question caught me off guard. "The room on the second floor has more space. If you remove the walls, you can utilize even more of it." "Really? Then I shouldn't have any space issues." Wondering what she was up to, I asked her for more details. "Are you planning on starting something new?" "Actually, I'm going to start a sewing class," she said with a proud and happy expression. "A sewing class? As a teacher?" I was genuinely surprised. The sewing circle at the community center is ending, and a friend suggested we start a new class together. It was surprising that my nearly 70-year-old mother-in-law would be teaching. "That's amazing. Sounds like fun," I responded with a bit of an exaggerated reaction. "So, you're having the sewing class at the community center?" "No, not there," she said with a smile. "Then where will you hold it?" "Here, at this house." "What? Are you serious?" I blurted out in disbelief. "That's why the second floor room seems perfect. Please tidy it up a bit. I'll have students coming over soon, so let's keep it neat." "But that's where I do a lot of my work," I replied with a concerned look. "Your job, right? You can use the first floor room." I was taken aback. "But that room is a bit small, and I need the flooring for my tools." She seemed to ponder a bit, but eventually smiled. "I'll reconsider, but I really like that room." Struggling for words, I asked, "So, what should I do then?" She took my hand and said, "Maybe you can rent an external studio for your work. I'll look into it." With that, she headed upstairs. I watched as she began to carefully put away my tools and materials. Taking a deep breath, I mustered some courage. "In that case, could I reduce the monthly rent I've been paying?" She smiled warmly. "Let's suggest it. But remember, we need to cooperate and support each other from now on." I reluctantly replied, "Understood." Then, the day of the sewing class my mother-in-law had planned arrived. The room was filled with lively voices. There were about 10 students, mostly my age, and I recognized a few faces. "Suzanne, can you help me out? Please serve tea to everyone." I nodded and headed upstairs to make the tea. After distributing it, I remembered something and said with a smile, "Now, about the room's usage fee." A momentary silence followed. "Usage fee? What's that about? Wait, we need to pay today?" Some of the students looked at me with surprised faces. My mother-in-law seemed to be hiding a hint of anger. "Actually, this room is my workspace, so if you want to use it, I'd like to charge a bit. Renting a space this size can be quite costly." My mother-in-law silently observed the reactions of the students. "It amounts to over $2,000 a month. So if we split it among everyone here today, it's about $100 per person. Is that something everyone can agree with?" I waited for a response with a smile. Suzanne, you can't be serious about this, can you? There was confusion on my mother-in-law's face. Yes, we will actually need to collect usage fees, but not from the participants today. We will also need to cover utilities and property taxes. As I continued in a gentle tone, my mother-in-law's expression softened. All right, I understand. But Suzanne, the utilities and such, I need some time to think about that. Well, if you use this room, it's only fair, I responded with a smile. The students who had been listening to our conversation began to murmur. Wait, was this originally Suzanne's room? Yes, it was initially my workspace. Knowing that, I might have to reconsider taking classes here. While some students looked worried, a few started to pack up to leave. What's the meaning of this? Inviting us and then doing this? One of my mother-in-law's friends, Michelle, raised her voice in frustration. Michelle, I'm sorry. This room is also Suzanne's workspace. My mother-in-law, looking frantic, called out to the departing students, Wait, please! But the sound of doors closing could be heard, one after another. Michelle looked at my mother-in-law with a puzzled face. Everyone, I apologize for the surprise, but this room is really important to me. I want everyone to have a good time here, so I just asked for a bit of understanding. I tried to ease the tension, but Michelle said, Next time, make sure to discuss this in advance. With a bitter smile, she patted my mother-in-law's shoulder and left. My mother-in-law stood there for a while. I finished my tea, left the room quietly, and decided to enjoy the outdoor air. Later, at a cozy cafe bathed in soft light, I was having a good time. In front of me were Michelle and the students involved in the earlier incident. Michelle, thank you for the other day. I expressed my heartfelt gratitude. Michelle smiled warmly. It's okay, Suzanne, but I was shocked that your mother-in-law would pull such a stunt, she said with a chuckle. I didn't expect things to turn out this way, but now I'm really enjoying it. A student sitting next to me said shyly. That day's events were actually a plan we had secretly hatched. The truth is, Michelle is the mother-in-law of my friend, and we've always been close. She always sees right through me when I'm in trouble. That's why, with Michelle's help, we decided to execute a certain plan. One of the students, who was the only one unaware of the situation, exclaimed, Wait, all that was planned? I said with hopeful anticipation, Well, I might have spiced things up a bit, but hopefully this will get my mother-in-law to be more considerate. Suzanne, you've really surprised me by coming up with something this entertaining, Michelle said with a bright smile. The atmosphere in the cafe was warm and friendly. Michelle was quite interested in my future plans. So, Michelle, what are you planning to do about the sewing class? For now, I'm planning to hold it at a different location. I see. I can introduce you to a place I know. They're very reliable. That's so kind of you, Suzanne. You're always so dependable. Michelle's words filled my heart with joy. After this incident, I felt our bond had deepened even more. As I sipped my fragrant tea, I felt confident in this. My mother-in-law seemed a little different when I got home. Suzanne, this is terrible. You made me look bad in front of a lot of people. Right now you need to say sorry to everyone. Her eyes were very angry. I took a big breath and slowly took out my phone. I showed her the name Michelle on the screen and said, Sorry, I'm on the phone right now. Her shocked face will stay with you forever. What? Why do you need to talk to Michelle? My husband's voice came through the phone when my shocked mother-in-law reached for it. Hey, Mom, what's this about Michelle? Her eyes were wide with shock, and she couldn't say a word. Yes, just for fun, I had changed my husband's contact name to Michelle. I couldn't help but smile when I saw how confused she looked. I told her, Don't worry, it's just a joke, and I walked to the kitchen. My mother-in-law's behavior changed a lot after that day. She seemed to be more careful around me and became kinder. She looked wary during meals, like she was wondering what I was going to do next. My husband saw the difference. "Mom, you don't seem quite right. Is everything okay?" She replied, I wonder why?" My husband said with a deep thought, "It could be because she's getting older." After that, our house was quieter. In my normal life, I started to chill out more. Someone silly thought a simple joke could make things so much worse at home. I love every day and savor every moment.